The young girl, possessing an inherently reckless nature, succumbed to a man's advances before her marriage. To safeguard her life, I acquiesced to her plea for elopement, agreeing to marry her intended, the crown prince. Yet, she swiftly turned her affections towards the emperor journeying south, entering the palace as a consort, brazenly exchanging glances with my husband and deftly maneuvering between father and son. That I in the midst of this, the Empress and I found ourselves falsely accused by my sister of being the architects of her lost virtue. Consequently, I met my demise, poisoned within the Tai Chi hall, while the Empress was confined to the cold palace. I end this new life, the Empress and I unite, determined to send her to the west. But, Aning. Someone is calling my name. I shake my head, and through the haze, I catch sight of my mother's worried expression. With a banquet of clinking goblets and flowing wine not far away. Surely you haven't indulged too much in drink, my dear girl. What brings you to partake in wine at such an occasion? It's nothing, mother. Perhaps the atmosphere in the palace is simply stifling. After soothing my mother, I pinch my fingers, stifling a headache as I look around. The vibrant silks swirl about me, and the cups continue to fill. It is unmistakably the scholar's feast. Yet, did I not perish in the Tai Chi hall? What is transpiring? Father, I have a request. Before I can gather my thoughts, a voice, so familiar it sends shivers down my spine, resounds. It is Prince Song Hui. He stands before the hall, glancing at our family's position. A flicker of dimness flashing in his eyes, quickly masked. In an instant, a chill envelopes me. For Song Hui will request the emperor to wed a daughter of the Yen family, and my father will weigh various considerations before ultimately acquiescing. Yet, they have mistaken the intended bride of Song Hui. His affections lie with my sister, Yen Ruo, who, for reasons unknown, is absent from the banquet today. In my previous life, my sister led a life of debauchery, entwined with several men, and had long lost her chastity, which led the Empress to forbid her from marrying her own son. Thus, after the prince's proposal, we sisters were summoned to the palace for guidance. Faced with a threat to her life, my sister beseeched me upon her return home, claiming she did not love the prince, having already pledged her heart to another. If I did not consent, she vowed to take her own life. In the face of my sister's desperate pleas, whom I had cherished since childhood, I reluctantly agreed. Thus, I became a substitute bride, while my sister eloped. However, this was not the end. During the emperor's southern tour, my sister, having learned the art of seduction, ensnared the emperor and became a consort, while also engaging in clandestine dealings with Song Hui, playing both father and son against each other. I, along with the Empress, was falsely accused by my sister of being the instigators of her lost virtue, leading to my demise in the Tai Chi hall and the Empress's imprisonment in the cold palace. Yet here I am, back at the scholar's feast. Song Hui's next words echo in my memory. Father, I wish to request the hand of a daughter of the Yen family. 2. In response to Song Hui's request, my father fell into deep contemplation, just as he had in my previous life. I knew he was concerned about my marriage, believing that Song Hui sought to marry me. After all, I had recently excelled in my studies and had garnered the Empress's praise as a woman of esteemed lineage. I tugged at my father's sleeve, shaking my head and whispering, Father, you must not consent. Moreover, it is not merely that I have no connection with the prince. He likely seeks my sister. Yet she has not come of age, and has already established ties with him. To those with ill intent, would it not imply that a daughter of the Yen family is involved with an outsider, tarnishing her reputation? The ruin of a woman's name is trivial. Yet should anyone exploit this to undermine your governance, it would be a grave matter. In my previous life, after this marriage proposal, my father's accolades were easily twisted into rumors that he achieved such honors through his association with the prince. For a man of integrity like my father, this was a profound insult. He had lived his life with honor, only to be slandered in the end. When he learned of Yen Ruo's ascent to consort and her entanglement with Song Hui, he felt increasingly that he should never have agreed to the marriage, burdened by a sense of guilt towards me and our ancestors. Consequently, he resigned from his position and took his own life in our ancestral home. Upon hearing my words, my father patted my hand. My daughter speaks the truth. I have been negligent. Thus, under the prince's earnest gaze, my father rejected the marriage proposal, expressing his unwillingness to entangle himself with royal affairs. Rising before the assembly, I knelt before the emperor. Your Majesty, the prince's request is unwelcome. I have already pledged my heart to another.
No.
Song Hui's eyes glinted with urgency, eager to refute. Your Highness, means to say he seeks my sister. But she has yet to come of age. How could she possibly be involved with an outsider? Do you wish to tarnish her virtue and subject her to the scorn of the world? I did not. Father, since Miss Yen is unwilling, then let it be. I was presumptuous. As Song Huai retracted his proposal, the matter faded into obscurity. Though the emperor chastised Song Huai publicly, the incident was soon brushed aside. Upon returning home, I confronted Yen Ruo, who appeared untroubled and cheerful. I struck her across the face. Kneel. 3. Yen Ruo was taken aback by my slap, her disbelief evident as she covered her face, while our parents looked on, puzzled by my sudden fury. Yan Ning, have you lost your mind? You return from the palace, and strike me. Yen Ruo cried, burying her face in our mother's embrace, questioning my actions. The side of her face I struck quickly turned red and swollen. I am not mad. I am entirely composed. I pulled her from our mother's arms and struck her again. The consecutive blows brought forth a torrent of tears from Yen Ruo. Aning you, our mother, filled with concern, hurriedly stepped in front of Yen Ruo to prevent my further aggression. Enough. My father, his face darkened, scolded us for this farce. Aning, if your wrath stems from the prince's proposal, striking your sister should suffice. Why do you persist? Observing my father's helplessness and my mother's confusion, I withdrew my hand and turned my gaze to Yen Ruo. Yen Ruo, you have entangled yourself with an outsider before coming of age. Do you deny it? Just as she had been elated upon hearing of the prince's interest, her expression shifted upon my accusation. No. Sister, do not slander me because you lack suitors. She retorted defiantly, her eyes ablaze with resentment, as if I were the one besmirching her honor. Am I the one slandering you? Prince Song Huai, the rogue Lian Feng, and that scholarly Qingji, Yen Ruo, who is truly guilty of slander. You or I. You did not attend the banquet today to rendezvous with Lian Feng, did you? You. Yen Ruo's eyes widened in disbelief, bewildered as to how I could accurately name her so-called suitors and know of her clandestine meeting. She was unaware that in my previous life, she had confessed all to me while begging me to marry Song Huai. Aning, is what you say true? Our parents exchanged incredulous glances, unable to fathom my words. Yen Ruo, her eyes glistening with tears, lamented, Sister, I know you are discontent that the prince favors me. I do not hold it against you for striking me, but you cannot humiliate me. You claim I consort with others. Do you have proof? Her demeanor shifted from panic to certainty, convinced I could not substantiate my claims. Indeed, had she not revealed her secrets in a moment of desperation, I would have remained oblivious to her indiscretions and loss of virtue. Noticing my silence, a flicker of malice crossed Yen Ruo's face. Sister, you are merely slandering me. Yen Ning, you. Our mother sighed, and my father shook his head in disappointment. Just as I found myself at a loss for words, a voice emerged from behind me. What if I possess evidence? For the Empress took her seat at the head of the table, and a peculiar silence enveloped the room. I watched as my father opened his mouth, hesitated, then finally spoke. Your Majesty, if I may be so bold to inquire about what you just said. At that moment, no one was astonished by the Empress's sudden appearance in our residence, but rather by her peculiar interest in my sister's affairs. The Empress remained poised in her chair, responding coolly, I possess evidence to substantiate Miss Yan's claims. Bring forth the individual. In walked a disheveled man, bruised and bound. His mouth gagged with ragged cloth, escorted by 2 guards. Thud. He was forcibly made to kneel beside Yen Ruo. Upon encountering the visitor, Yen Ruo's eyes flickered with a hint of panic. I pondered, observing her reaction alongside the man's attire, and concluded that it could undoubtedly be Lian Feng. Aside from the bruises adorning his face, he possessed a certain charm and elegance, a striking handsomeness that could easily captivate Yen Ruo. Yen Ruo, I must inquire whether you recognize the person before you. If you do not, then let him be dealt with accordingly. Entangling oneself with a noblewoman is a grave offense. I stated. Yen Ruo bit her lip, struggling for a moment before managing to utter 3 words. I do not know him. Lian Feng's expression morphed into one of disbelief as he fought against his restraints, emitting muffled sounds of protest. Let him speak, commanded the Empress, prompting the guards to remove the rag from his mouth. Lady Yen, you and I shared moments of intimacy, and now you claim not to know me? This seems rather heartless. That's not true. You're speaking nonsense. Yen Ruo's eyes reddened as she hastily denied his claims, fully aware of the consequences she would face if she admitted to their connection in this setting. Nonsense, is it? Then the red birthmark on your side is also a figment of my imagination. At that moment, The room fell into a stunned silence, all eyes darting about, save for my mother and Yenrua, who appeared pale and on the brink of collapse. Unfilial daughter. Unfilial daughter. My parents, upon hearing Lien Feng's words, could no longer remain oblivious to the truth of the situation. My father, struggling to maintain his composure, bowed deeply to the Empress. Your Majesty, I have failed as a father and am unworthy of your grace. My daughter should pay for her transgressions with her life, but, considering her youth, I beseech you to show mercy. From this day forth, she shall reflect upon her actions in the ancestral hall for 1 month, after which she will be sent to Qingshan Temple to shave her head and become a nun, spending her life in solitude with the ancient Buddha. Since Lord Yen has proposed a punishment, let it be so, the Empress acquiesced. Thank you for your mercy, your Majesty. Father. A sharp clap echoed in the air as my father, filled with disappointment, gazed at Yenrua, gesturing for the guards to escort her into the ancestral hall. I stood silently by, a mere backdrop to the unfolding drama, my heart aching with regret. My father's arrangement was evidently a means to spare Yenrua's life. But with the Empress's approval, there was no turning back. After all, the Empress's intent was to ensure that Yenrua could never be with Song Hui. Lost in thought, I suddenly heard the Empress request my presence to converse with her. My mind raced as I realized this was a rare opportunity for solitude. Though the notion of reincarnation seemed absurd, I felt compelled to risk everything and speak the truth. Your Majesty, I am a person who has lived again. Yanning. I have also been reborn. We exchanged glances, both surprised yet instinctively lifting our teacups to take a sip. The Empress, too, had experienced rebirth, thus providing an explanation for the day's events. But Your Majesty, why did you not simply execute her earlier? If the Empress had also been reborn, she could have taken Lien Feng's life instead of allowing my father to send her to the temple. I cannot kill her, nor can I, the Empress replied. Yanning, I have lived 3 lives. It turned out the Empress had indeed attempted to eliminate Yenrua. In her first life, she was imprisoned in the cold palace, where the Emperor, incited by Yenrua, sought to poison her, only to be thwarted by the Empress's loyal confidant. Refusing to be outdone, the Empress pressured her maternal family to secure her release, subsequently orchestrating an assassination attempt on Yenrua. However, Yenrua seemed to possess some inexplicable allure, leading all her assailants to turn against the Empress, who ultimately met her demise at their hands. What if Your Majesty took matters into your own hands? As the revered Empress, surely you would not fall under Yenrua's enchantment. The Empress shook her head. Ineffective. In my second life, their illicit relationship persisted. To stabilize the court, I had to assume control of the government, yet she audaciously attempted to meddle in state affairs. Learning from the lessons of my previous life, I resolved to act, but as I approached her, she unleashed a protective barrier, inflicting fatal wounds upon me. I then overheard her conversing with an unseen presence, dismissing me as overreaching, though she was alone. State affairs, a protective barrier, an unknown conversation. The Empress had encountered the court's complexities and perceived the barrier while hearing Yenrua's dialogue with the void. Could it be? Your Majesty, have you ever attempted to master the court before eliminating Yenrua? The Empress let out a short laugh, followed by a deep sigh. I have tried. In my third life, I opted for restraint, determined to uncover the secrets she harbored. Thus, I allowed their debauchery to continue while I seized control of the court and discovered her hidden truths. She possesses an entity that claims to be the Tao of Heaven, capable of siphoning the fortunes of others through physical contact, enabling her to thrive among the favored. Once they are no longer of use, she discards them, with the Emperor and his son being the most fortunate, as their dragon energy empowers Yenrua, making her the focal point of this dynasty. Anyone outside her immediate family is susceptible to her manipulation, yet this entity warns that once the dragon energy dissipates, the fortune of our nation will crumble, leaving the populace homeless and soldiers dead on the battlefield. But Yenrua, she is utterly indifferent. Her only concern is herself. Consequently, after usurping the Emperor's authority, I wielded my sword to strike her down. I did manage to wound her this time, but once again, I met my demise at the hands of that luminous force. The Empress lowered her gaze, tapping her cup thoughtfully. Upon awakening, I reflected on the tribulations of my past lives and discerned that once I assumed control of the government, I could hear Yenrua conversing with that entity. Moreover, in my previous life, I was able to injure her, which likely correlates with the extent of my power. I met the Empress's gaze. The realization dawning upon me that her failure to eliminate Yen Ruo in her past life stemmed from her not being the true ruler, merely acting in the emperor's stead, leading to her miscalculations. I believed she had surmised this as well. I locked eyes with her, a resolute determination in mine. Your Majesty, let's attempt once more. After our nocturnal discourse, the Empress and I prepared ourselves, fully aware of the adversary we would confront. The first step was to ensure that the news of Yen Ruo's confinement remained strictly within the household, preventing any leaks, especially to Song Hui. To that end, I informed my parents that the Empress was gravely displeased with Yen Ruo. Should she continue her association with the Crown Prince, not only would Yen Ruo's life be at stake, but our entire family would face dire consequences. My parents, driven by the need to preserve our lives, complied without question. Thus, I summoned the few servants who had interacted with Yen Ruo that night, threatening them with the loss of their tongues and their sale into brothels should they dare to disclose even a whisper of information. No one was dispatched to oversee the ancestral hall. Only a mute servant was assigned to deliver meals thrice daily, arriving and departing without delay. I would not underestimate the seductive prowess Yen Ruo wielded. Furthermore, I resolved to identify and eliminate each of Yen Ruo's paramours. I examined the list provided by the Empress, which contained the names of those fortunate individuals drawn to Yen Ruo. Li Qingji, Lian Feng. The list comprised 15 names, a staggering number. However, I would only handle those residing in the capital. The Empress would dispatch others to deal with the remainder. According to the Empress, most names on the list were those Yen Ruo had befriended during her escape with Lian Feng, and they had all shared intimate relations with her. I inhaled deeply.
Contemplating Yen Ruo's petite figure.
Appearances can be deceiving. I raised my voice, calling out, Ruojiu. A figure suddenly materialized. She was the individual the Empress had entrusted to me along with the list. Ruojiu was skilled in combat and could assist me in my endeavors. Most importantly, she possessed the ability to disguise herself. It is said that even the mightiest heroes struggle to resist the charms of beautiful women, and my task was to ensnare these heroes within the allure of Yen Ruo. My finger traced the first name on the list. It shall be you. Hey, little lady. Why not simply yield to me? This gentleman, please release me. Someone help. The sound of tearing fabric echoed through the alley. Just as the man was about to commit an even graver act, he was interrupted. How dare you brazenly attempt to abduct a virtuous woman in broad daylight? I have already reported this to the authorities. You had better leave at once. A scholar-like figure stood nearby, brandishing a stick in a threatening manner. You're quite bold. The man exclaimed upon hearing the mention of the authorities, and he hastily fled, leaving behind the sobbing woman and the scholar. Young master, woo-woo. The woman cried as she flung herself into the scholar's embrace, while he fumbled awkwardly, ultimately resting his hand on her back. I closed the window, concealing the scene in the alley. Here, take this. It is your reward. Remember, speak of this matter with caution. Thank you, Mississippi. I assure you, I shall remain discreet. The individual collecting the silver at the door was none other than the lecher from the alley. Miss, it has been resolved. Yes.
Send someone to keep watch.
If he speaks out of turn. I gestured with my hand across my throat. Understood. After the maid departed, I opened the window once more to see the woman's bashful face and the scholar's flushed ears. They exited in succession, and the woman discreetly winked in my direction. It seemed that Ruojiu had succeeded. The scholar was Li Qingji, and this heroic rescue was deliberately staged for his benefit. He had a penchant for championing the oppressed and aiding the weak, and it was through this that Yen Ruo had come to know him. The Empress mentioned that Li Qingji had ascended to the position of Deputy Minister of Justice, having falsely accused many loyal officials of harboring ill will towards Yen Ruo in the previous dynasty. My father had also suffered from slander, orchestrated by him. Eventually, his fortunes ran dry, and he was discovered to have abused his power, resulting in his execution. The best way to ruin his fortunes and render him a fallen figure was indeed through such means. The talented scholar and the exquisite maiden, a captivating pairing. The question remained how long their enchantment would last. Ruojiu was swift in her actions. Li Qingji was already unable to detach himself from her. I stood dumbfounded. How little time had passed. Have you ever heard of black jade ointment, my lady? I nodded, having learned of it by chance. It was originally a remedy capable of temporarily numbing the pain of the severely injured, facilitating doctors in treating wounds. However, excessive use could lead to addiction, and many had lost their fortunes due to it, prompting the court to impose strict prohibitions. I never imagined Ruojiu could procure it. This very substance, once one becomes ensnared by it, escape is nearly impossible. Those who attempt to quit often shed their very humanity. Ruogio scoffed, then swiftly changed the subject. Now that he is of no use, how shall you proceed, my lady? I brushed off the dust clinging to my garments. There is no need to retain those who serve no purpose. Li Qingji met his demise, succumbing to the allure of forbidden substances. I did not conceal this news from Yenrua. Rather, I intentionally had others converse loudly outside the ancestral hall, ensuring she would learn of the death of a reliable aide. She did not disappoint my expectations, creating a ruckus in the hall, throwing things about, and crying out for her parents. Under Yenrua's cries, her parents truly came. To claim I was not disappointed would be disingenuous. I had hoped that after the last incident, they would recognize Yenrua's true nature, yet upon her outburst, they still rushed to her side. My parents had always favored Yenrua, primarily because of her frailty from not being born at full term, unlike my robust self. Thus, they often prioritized her needs. While I believed their favoritism was unjust, Yenrua was endearing, my sister, and part of the family. Yet it was she who ultimately led to our family's ruin. Continuing to indulge her would only invite further calamity. I followed my parents in silence. Inside the ancestral hall, aside from the intact ancestral tablets on the offering table, everything else lay in disarray. Father, mother, you have arrived. I heard that Li Lang has died. It cannot be true, can it? Please release me. I must see. Yenrua immediately demanded to leave the ancestral hall, while my parents quietly began to tidy up the fallen offerings, ignoring her pleas. I joined in the cleanup, silently praying for our ancestors' forgiveness. Seeing this, Yenrua attempted to stop my parents, but I intervened. Yenrua, if you possess even a modicum of filial piety, you should kneel and apologize rather than shout and scream. Who needs your feigned kindness? Get away.
Slap.
A red mark swiftly appeared on Yenrua's face. My father lowered his hand, his eyes devoid of the warmth they once held. My mother, too, paused momentarily before resuming her task of cleaning the offering table, no longer rushing to protect Yenrua as she had before. Indeed, the Li Lang you speak of has perished. Yenrua fell silent for a long while, her expression shifting from uncertainty to shock. Surely, she had been seeking assistance from that substance to ascertain whether Li Qingji was still alive. Unfortunately, the answer was not to her liking. The color drained from Yenrua's face as she mourned the loss of yet another source for her addiction. Yet, in my father's eyes, the situation appeared differently.
Yenrua.
I once believed your immaturity was merely a result of your youth, which is why your mother and I treated you with more leniency than Aining. But you, on one hand, consort with numerous men outside, disregarding your honor. On the other, you are arrogant and overbearing within, showing no respect for your elder sister or our ancestors. Disrespectful, unfilial, rude, and morally bankrupt. My father sighed deeply. I have failed our ancestors, even contemplating sending you away secretly in a month's time. But that is no longer necessary. You shall remain in the ancestral hall and await your fate. My father knelt on the mat and bowed 3 times. Rising, he did not glance at Yenrua again. Aining, let us go. I hurried to support my parents as we left the ancestral hall. Behind us, Yenrua's cries echoed. Father, no. I was wrong. Father. My parents paused, and I thought they might go to comfort Yenrua. But instead, my mother embraced me tightly, repeatedly apologizing. My father patted my shoulder. Aining, we have wronged you over the years. It is our fault. My nose tingled, and tears welled in my eyes. It turned out that I too had been wronged, though I had always suppressed my feelings as the elder sister. In the days that followed, Yenrua became silent, no longer causing a ruckus. I thought perhaps she had calmed down, and even checked on her a few times, only to hear her still dreaming of how her parents would forgive her if she behaved obediently. She murmured about how she would make me pay once she was free. It seemed she was merely putting on an act. This was convenient. I would no longer feel compelled to show her mercy for the sake of my parents. Upon returning to the courtyard, Ruogio arrived, bringing with her a letter from the Empress. The Empress had begun to take action. I lit a lamp, and the letter slowly turned to ashes, falling to the ground. Our plan was for me to handle those fortunate individuals outside the palace, while the Empress began to undermine the Emperor from within. The best way to distract the Emperor from governance was through 2 methods, either seducing him with beauty, causing him to neglect court, or rendering him unconscious, making him incapable of attending court. We decided to pursue both avenues. First, we would entice the Emperor with allure, and the Empress would gradually administer poison. When the toxins spread throughout his body, it would be his downfall. By then, even if the imperial physician were to investigate, he would only conclude it was a stroke caused by excessive debility. The emperor was never a wise ruler. Had it not been for the empress adhering to ancestral traditions and advising the emperor against indulging in the harem, he would have already faced ruin.
Now,
The empress was unwilling to intervene, allowing those concubines to use their fragrances and potions, which would only harm the emperor's health and hasten the poison's effects. As for Song Huai, the emperor had only this one son. The rest were daughters. If the emperor were to suffer a stroke, the throne would inevitably fall to Song Huai. This was a result none of us desired to witness. However, Song Huai had established his residence outside the palace, only permitted to enter on certain days for formal greetings. If the empress summoned him daily, it would be inappropriate. Should anything occur, she would be the prime suspect. Thus, this matter fell solely to me. I approached the writing desk and took up the brush. My beloved, if not for the affairs of the court, your reputation would have been tarnished. I am filled with trepidation, and it has been days since I have received any news from you or glimpsed your enchanting visage. Day and night, I long to hold you in my embrace. I am aware of your constraints within the palace, but if you harbor no anger, might you send a token of your affection to ease my yearning? I changed the paper and continued, Dearest Huai, due to matters at court, I must remain at home in quietude. Yet, your heart mirrors my own, for I too think of you, my beloved Huai. I have sent a small token, hoping it will bring you comfort and warmth. Setting down my pen, I shuddered slightly and hurriedly folded the letter, fearing that if I lingered too long over it, I would lose my appetite. In my previous life, had I not fortuitously stumbled upon their correspondence, I would never have guessed that Song Huai could compose such heartfelt words. Thankfully, my past boredom led me to study their handwriting, allowing me to imitate it so perfectly in this moment. I dispatched someone to place the letter in Yan Rua's food box, and now, all that remained was to await her reply. 3 days later, I retrieved Yan Rua's response and the token she had sent from the mute servant. The letter indeed contained a plea for help, but what of it? I produced the letter I had prepared in advance and replaced it. As for the token, I was utterly astonished that Yan Rua would choose such an item for Song Huai. I picked up a string and soaked it in a potion. The undergarment unfurled in the water, adorned with the pattern of mandarin ducks. After a day of soaking, the potion had lightened, and once dried, I rolled it in the fragrant powder Yan Rua typically used, ensuring it was infused with her scent before placing it back in the box. I then found a servant to deliver it to the prince's residence. The carriage ambled past Song Huai's estate, and I watched as he eagerly opened the box. Blushing as he inhaled the fragrance, a look of satisfaction crossing his face as he entered the palace. Given Song Huai's obsession, it wouldn't be long before he succumbed completely, with no remedy in sight. Yet, I had not anticipated that he would undertake an even more astonishing act. News spread that Song Huai could no longer fulfill his marital duties. Upon hearing this, I nearly laughed aloud, risking exposure. Earlier this morning, the Empress secretly summoned me to the palace, claiming she had a splendid spectacle to show me, and she arranged for my presence in the inner hall. As I stood there in confusion, Song Huai stumbled in, shouting, Mother, save me. Through the paper window, I witnessed his pale visage collapsing before the Empress. Mother, quickly summon Physician Chen, he cried. Physician Chen was the foremost physician of the Imperial Hospital, under the Empress's command. Calling for him could only mean dire illness. Yet, aside from his unusual pallor, Song Huai's movements were intact. The Empress furrowed her brow in inquiry, but Song Huai evaded her questions, prompting her to send for Physician Chen. When Physician Chen arrived and completed his examination, he delivered a thunderous revelation. Song Huai was unable to perform his marital duties. I swiftly stifled a gasp, trying to suppress the tea I had just sipped, and pounded my chest to regain my composure. What? The Empress feigned distress, immediately rising to exit. This matter is of great importance. I must inform your father. Mother, you mustn't. Hearing the confirmation of his condition, Song Huai leaped from his chair to obstruct the Empress. If you tell father, I will lose my claim to the throne, and my life will be ruined by you. I caught a fleeting shadow of darkness in the Empress's eyes before her anxious demeanor returned. What do you propose we do? She sighed as she resumed her seat. Physician Chen must be able to cure me, right? Song Huai's gaze was fervently fixed on the physician, as if threatening his life should the man utter otherwise. Unfazed, Physician Chen stroked his beard and replied calmly, Rest assured, Your Highness, there is still hope. This is merely a temporary condition. I shall procure the necessary remedies to alleviate your distress. Song Huai exhaled in relief, trembling hands grasping for the physician as he hastily departed, neglecting to bow to the Empress in gratitude. Once they had all left, I exited the inner hall. Your Majesty, what now? I inquired. The Empress's face was serene, entirely devoid of the earlier urgency. As you can see, he is no longer capable. Cough, cough. What is the reason? Yesterday, Physician Chen examined his pulse and concluded that the poison had invaded his body through that area, rendering him incapacitated. Should he wish to engage in marital relations, he would require copious amounts of potent medicine, which would unfortunately render him unable to bear heirs. I have instructed him to convert this potent medicine into a more benign form for his consumption. I smirked slightly. Congratulating the Empress at this juncture seemed somewhat inappropriate, given that Song Huai was her own son. Yet, this was indeed a matter worth celebrating. Perhaps my expression was too peculiar, for the Empress burst into laughter. It matters not. I am quite pleased. This way, no one can obstruct our path forward, though it is somewhat unexpected that he would act so rashly.
Indeed.
Who could have foreseen such a turn of events? Now that Song Huai was incapacitated and unable to ascend the throne, only the Emperor remained. But you just mentioned not informing His Majesty. The Empress smiled knowingly. Must it be I who reveals it? The following day, the news of the Crown Prince's impotence spread throughout the palace and the court. According to my father, during a court session, a minister boldly demanded that the royal physician be summoned to examine the Crown Prince, only to be reprimanded by the Emperor and sternly instructed to cease spreading such rumors. It appeared the Emperor was already aware of the situation. Recently, he had been spending increasingly long hours in the harem, even neglecting morning court sessions, publicly claiming to be ailing. Upon returning home, my father sighed repeatedly, understanding full well that the Emperor's behavior indicated that Song Huai was indeed incapable, and he felt compelled to endeavor to produce another son with the concubines. However, the Empress would never allow it, nor would Song Huai. He had sought out the Empress after learning of the leak, yet this was not her doing. She simply permitted the scheming concubines to relay the information. That spy, too, had met a tragic end at Song Huai's hands. The Empress informed Song Huai that the Emperor had grown suspicious and was now frequenting the harem, a situation she felt powerless to prevent. Unwilling to relinquish his rightful position, Song Huai resolved to take preemptive action. As long as the concubines bore no children and the Emperor died, he would ascend the throne. The Empress feigned reluctance, but Song Huai would not heed her. He merely urged her not to impede his plans, for once successful, she would become the Empress Dowager. Yet, unbeknownst to him, the Empress coveted that throne for herself. Song Huai's actions conveniently provided the Empress with a scapegoat. Why would she genuinely seek to thwart him? As the Emperor increasingly indulged in the harem, the concubines seized the opportunity to showcase their charms, employing both potions and seduction, and some even resorted to brazen displays, filling the palace with vibrant allure. Gradually, the Emperor neglected state affairs, delegating all matters to the Empress, even allowing her to manage the requests of ministers. When advised by officials, the Emperor merely stated his trust in Zedong. Over time, those ministers ceased to voice their opinions, recognizing that the Empress's political acumen and foresight far surpassed the Emperor's. However, after some time in power, the Empress grew weary and relinquished authority to Song Huai, retreating to the palace for respite. I once inquired if she feared Song Huai might seize power. The Empress merely smiled and told me to wait and see. Within days, those ministers were beseeching the Empress to return to governance, for Song Huai, as the Emperor's second, was inept and overly ambitious. Infuriated, Song Huai was persuaded by the Empress to learn the ropes gradually. After the Empress resumed her rule, the court regained clarity and order. Even my father remarked at home that the Empress was born in the wrong gender. Had she been a man, how splendid it would have been. Father, though I dwell in the depths of the inner chambers, I am aware of your ambitions for family, country, and the world. Previously, His Majesty feared you and suppressed you. But now with the Empress in power, and as you have said, she is benevolent and values the worthy. Why not give it a try? I stood by my father's side, holding a brush, and inscribed the 4 characters Zhongrenhe upon the paper.
正通人和.
My father fell into deep contemplation. Yet, I was certain he would comprehend the essence of my words. Departing from the study, I carried a food box to the ancestral hall, for it was time to deliver a meal to Yen Rua. She remained in the ancestral hall, deprived of her parents' visits for an extended period. Employing her usual tactics, she sought to provoke attention from them through tantrums and disturbances, but her parents never returned even once. She had come to realize that she had truly lost their affection, and there was no hope of being exchanged for their love. Consequently, she sought the assistance of the mute servant, who had long been manipulated, to aid her escape. With this inclination, I replaced the mute servant and took it upon myself to deliver her meals daily, ensuring no one else could approach her. Yan Ning, are you pleased? There will come a day of regret. Yan Ruo overturned the food box, glaring at me with venomous intent. You will meet a terrible fate.
Oh.
The identity of the one destined for misfortune remains uncertain. I received another correspondence from the Empress, this time a verbal decree. Ruo Jiu appeared at my side, having scaled the window. Miss, the Empress has declared that the time has arrived. Very well. Since the Empress indicated that the moment had come, I deemed it unnecessary to continue delivering her meals. Without the mute servant's assistance, her escape would not be easily achieved. As the month drew near, Yan Ruo grew increasingly restless. If she did not depart soon, she would end up as a concubine. Thus, she repeatedly overturned the food box in my presence, hurling curses at me and demanding her release. I merely turned and walked away. The food had been delivered. Whether she chose to eat or starve was her own decision. After several instances, she resigned to her fate, ceasing to overturn the food box, though her curses persisted. I, with cotton stuffed in my ears, regarded it as a silent performance. When Yan Ruo realized that her provocations bore no fruit, she resorted to pleading, weeping before me, imploring me to release her for the sake of our blood ties. Annoyed, I produced the cotton from my ears in front of her. Upon witnessing her pallor shift, I smiled contentedly and turned to leave. Through prolonged contact, I had not sensed any peculiar power emanating from her. It seemed the Empress's assertion that one could not influence their closest kin held true. A few days later, Yan Ruo was to be sent to the temple for shaving her head. Following the Empress's instructions, I released the mute servant to assist Yan Ruo. That very night, she utilized the mute servant to flee. Ruo Jiu followed closely behind, observing her seek out Song Huai, but he had already been summoned to the palace by the Empress. Thus, she was left to linger at the tavern, waiting for an inner court attendant to be seduced during the day to escort her into the palace. Meanwhile, the Empress had made her preparations. Awaiting her was the Emperor, not her beloved Song Huai. No, a lascivious voice echoed through the imperial garden, unmistakably the sound of a coupling. Let us see who dares to defile the inner palace. The Empress and several noble ladies were enjoying the blooming flowers when they heard this voice, frowning as they followed the sound, only to discover two figures beneath a bright yellow cloak, entwined in passion. Occasionally, a pair of white legs would be revealed, only to be grasped back by hands, and upon our arrival, the two were just emerging from their tryst.
Ah!
One young lady gasped, interrupting the lover's reverie. The woman turned, letting out a shriek. Oh dear. Is that not the second daughter of the Yen family? A noblewoman's eyes sparkled with excitement, and I would not let her opportunity go to waste. You were clearly confined at home. How did you end up here, and with His Majesty no less? My trembling hand pointed accusingly at the prostrate Yan Ruo. Upon seeing me, Yan Ruo grinned triumphantly, then recoiled, panting as she nestled into the Emperor's embrace. Your Majesty, I am frightened. The Emperor, cradling the fragrant beauty, felt a surge of tenderness. Enough. Do I not merely dote upon your sister? This is heaven's grace. Let her enter the palace. I shuddered and knelt in gratitude, only to roll my eyes and faint dramatically. Of course, it was all an act. Upon reaching the Empress's chamber, I promptly regained consciousness. It worked. The Empress winked at me, and I returned her smile. This had been our scheme. Yan Ruo believed she could find Song Huai, yet instead, she encountered the Emperor, who had already been served a cup of tea infused with potent aphrodisiacs by the Empress. Realizing that the Emperor was in need of relief, Yan Ruo would certainly seize the opportunity, for the Emperor was indeed the true dragon of the realm, brimming with dragon energy. Thus, the thunder ignited the fire, and their illicit encounter transpired in the imperial garden. Yet, unbeknownst to her, without the drug, the Emperor would be incapable of consummating their union, thus failing to bestow upon Yan Ruo the coveted dragon energy. Should the Emperor falter, Yan Ruo would be compelled to seek out Song Huai. However, Song Huai was also in a precarious state. According to Imperial physician Chen's report, in his quest to restore his vigor, Song Huai had consumed numerous counterfeit medicines, subsequently engaging in indiscretions within his household to prove his prowess, leaving his body severely depleted. I had no intention of alerting Yan Ruo. I would rather lend her a hand. After all, how else could I fulfill the plans devised by the Empress and myself? News of Yan Ruo's favored status spread like wildfire, swiftly reaching the former court. My father directly severed ties with Yan Ruo in the court assembly, declaring that regardless of her future circumstances, she was no longer associated with the Yan family. Song Hui, in disbelief, could not fathom that the beloved he had not seen for merely a month had become a consort of his own father. Ruar clearly harbors feelings for me. How could she possibly be with the emperor? Enough! Yan Rua is now your father's possession. Do you intend to carry on an illicit affair with her? The Empress struck Song Hui across the face, chiding him to cease his nonsensical thoughts while inadvertently providing him with a notion. An affair. Under the Empress's intentional oversight, Song Hui, who had been under strict surveillance for several days, finally found an opportunity to convey a message to Yan Rua, arranging a clandestine meeting at the rockery in the imperial garden. Once, twice, they succeeded, growing increasingly audacious and daring to engage in their affair during daylight hours. Who surpasses whom? Me or the emperor? You, of course. You are young and vigorous. His Majesty cannot compare. Brother Hui, take it slow. Haha, the emperor is old. Once I ascend the throne, I shall make you empress. I discreetly lifted my gaze to see the emperor's face dark as coal, recalling that this was the very spot where he had previously dallied with Yan Rua. The empress raised an eyebrow, exchanging a knowing glance with me. Indeed, their fate was sealed. I had anticipated this scene would take a long time to unfold, yet it appeared that men were indeed easily provoked. Today was originally intended for the emperor to take several high-ranking officials and their families on an outing. Song Hui and Yan Rua could seize the opportunity for their secret rendezvous, but the emperor unexpectedly became dizzy along the way and decided to return home, opting instead to host a banquet in the imperial garden. Little did we expect that this incident would occur, and everyone wished they had never set foot in the imperial garden that day. You wretched scoundrels! The emperor roared. And only then did the two on the ground realize they had been exposed before all. Yan Rua hastily gathered her garments, falling to her knees, while Song Hui, clad only in his inner garments, crawled towards the emperor. Father, I was wrong. It was her. She seduced me. Your Majesty. It was the crown prince who forced himself upon me. Yan Rua wept, raising her innocent face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her plight seemingly sincere, if not for the telltale red marks upon her shoulders. Scoundrel! Unfilial wretch! The emperor retreated a few steps, pointing at Yan Rua. Empress! Have her punished. Cast her into the heavenly prison.
And you?
He directed his finger at Song Hui. You, the crown prince, devoid of virtue, dare to usurp royal authority and claim the title of prince, you shall be confined to the ancestral hall. Father! Song Hui's eyes blazed with fury as he stood, pointing at the emperor. If you depose me, who will inherit the throne? Those princesses? Or the empress? You have only me. Moreover, it is you who have wrongfully seized my Ruar. Is it a crime for me to reclaim her? The crowd was taken aback. The crown prince's audacity was astonishing. Was he courting death? Only the empress, and I noticed that after Yan Rua momentarily lost her focus, Song Hui erupted with sudden fury. It was likely that she had manipulated something about her to influence Song Hui. I must admit, her strategy was astute. After all, with the emperor's health failing, Song Hui was the sole contender for the imperial throne, and thus she needed to maintain a firm grip on him. She believed that once the emperor passed away, she could ascend to the role of favored consort through Song Hui. I suspect she could also utilize her means to hasten the emperor's decline. Indeed, the moment Song Hui's shout echoed through the chamber, the emperor seemed to be grasped by an unseen hand at his throat.
Ha!
You, your Majesty! The emperor collapsed backward, unconscious. All present understood that the emperor had suffered a stroke due to the crown prince's rage. Foolish, foolish. The emperor's speech was slurred, saliva pooling at the corners of his mouth. Yet, this did not detract from his lucid commands. Yan Rua was to be imprisoned, and Song Hui was to be deposed. The ministers were hastily summoned to the palace to deliberate on the ensuing course of action. Yan Rua's imprisonment was a foregone conclusion, but the real contention lay with Song Hui. One faction insisted on adhering to the emperor's decree to depose Song Hui, arguing that the emperor had merely suffered a stroke and might yet recover, especially considering that the empress could still manage state affairs. Conversely, another faction contended that Song Hui, being the emperor's only son, could not be deposed and was necessary to oversee the grand scheme. The empress countered, weighing the merits of her political stance against that of the crown prince. The opposing faction fell silent, yet continued to argue over legitimacy. Amid this heated debate within the emperor's chamber, the empress tended to the emperor by administering medicine while I busied myself beside her, spooning the concoction into the emperor's mouth. Foolish, foolish. Your Majesty, Do you not wish to spare the crown prince? The emperor blinked slowly, gasping for breath. The empress chuckled softly, continuing to feed him the medicine. Your Highness, it is done. I presented the decree to her, inscribed with the order to pass the throne to the crown prince. The emperor fixated on the line where Song Huai's name was explicitly stated before closing his eyes, permitting the empress to summon the ministers. Unbeknownst to him, the empress discreetly crumpled the decree, removing a piece of paper that she handed to me. On it was written Song Huai's name, while the decree bore the empress's name. My earlier efforts had been to forge a false decree in the emperor's handwriting. As the ministers entered the chamber, they conveyed the decree. One bold minister dared to inquire, Your Majesty, is this decree authentic? Indeed. With the emperor's affirmation, the empress produced the imperial seal and pressed it onto the document.
Thud.
The dust settled. All the ministers knelt in unison. We humbly welcome the empress to ascend the throne. Impossible. Father, how could you be so cruel? Song Huai, restrained by palace attendants, struggled on the ground. The emperor, wide-eyed, attempted to speak, but could produce no sound. All ministers rise. The Vice Minister of Rights, respectfully request the empress to hold the coronation ceremony in 3 days to govern the state. Granted. As for the crown prince, we shall follow His Majesty's decree to strip him of his title and confine him within the House of Clans. Understood. The attendants dragged Song Huai from the Great Hall, where he protested in disbelief. All ministers, you may withdraw. The empress waved her hand, dismissing the others from the palace and closing the door behind them. Your Majesty, is the medicine palatable? The emperor's mouth opened wide, yet he could not utter a sound. Only more saliva trickled forth, dampening his collar and pillow.
What?
Do you accuse me of being a venomous woman? The empress laughed joyfully, smoothing her hair. No poison, no man. You taught me that. Though I am a woman, have I not claimed the throne like a man? As for you, Your Majesty, remain here in peace. Ning, let us go. I followed closely behind the empress as the palace made open the hall door, revealing the bright sunlight outside. Long live the emperor. The synchronized acclamations resounded throughout the great hall. The empress ascended the throne, becoming Emperor Ning, granting a universal amnesty. I walked behind her to the place where Yen Ruo was imprisoned. Impossible. How could I fail? I should be the center of this world. System, what are you doing? Aren't you supposed to assist me? Failure imminent. Unknown threat detected. A jarring sound pierced my ears, and I turned to see the empress's hand resting on my shoulder. Is this what she possesses? Indeed, and it is also the root of our past tragedies. The empress, sword in hand, approached Yen Ruo, her expression devoid of emotion. You are the cause of my suffering. Thanks to the empress, I glimpsed a flash of light emanating from Yen Ruo. Although my earlier conjecture was that the empress could end Yen Ruo's life upon her ascension, it remained mere speculation. Your Majesty, be careful. Ha ha ha. All of you shall perish. Yen Ruo's triumphant laughter was abruptly cut short as a sword pierced through her chest.
Shut.
The empress withdrew the blade, and Yen Ruo crumpled to the ground. How could this be? I cannot die. My heart raced as if it would leap from my chest, but I was unharmed. Just then, the ominous voice echoed once more.
Failure.
Self-destruction. 10, 9, 8. No, do not. System, return to me. Yen Ruo flailed her arms in the air, attempting to grasp something, but ultimately, it was in vain. She lay dead, eyes wide open, blood pooling around her. I stepped out of the prison cell, not daring to glance back. Song Huai had lost his sanity. Day and night, he shouted he was the emperor from within the House of Clans. I visited him once. He was disheveled and clad in rags, proclaiming himself emperor to anyone who would listen, donning a broken bowl as a makeshift crown. The empress explained that Yen Ruo's retaliation from the prison had siphoned Song Huai's fortune. Due to the distance, the extraction had been arduous, and they opted to draw it all at once, resulting in Song Huai's madness. Coupled with his already depleted health, his days were surely numbered. I then set aside the dagger in my hand. It was not worth staining my hands with his blood. When the emperor inquired if I wished to remain in court as a female official, I declined. I expressed my desire to traverse the mountains and rivers, to truly behold the beauty of our realm. Thus, the emperor bestowed upon me a token, permitting me to withdraw funds from various money houses. It was then I learned that the empress's maternal family was a prominent clan entrenched in the southern regions. Thank you, Your Majesty. I accepted the token and, riding in a carriage, departed the palace. A graceful figure awaited me at the palace gates, holding a horse. Broajo, let us go. The end of the story. Thank you for listening. Until we meet again in the next tale.